We thought we would open with something actually a little bit different to kick things off, but actually it's a little more interactive type of presentation here. You can notice I've actually got a few more brushes and a few more canvases, so I just wanted to see by a quick show of hands, who here can draw? All right, I said just a little less than half of you. Rarely, if you've never get even one brave soul, that's going to raise their hand and say that they can, in fact, draw. But if I were to go down to your, say, high school, secondary school, anywhere throughout the world, and I were to ask those students, ages 15 to 17, who can draw, I'm going to statistically, on average, get between 8 and 10% of those students are going to say that they can, in fact, draw. But if I were to go down to your preschools, any preschool, and I were to say, hey, kids, who here can draw? What's the response that I'm going to get? Yeah. Energy. At what age, then, do you think that creative river that once did certainly flows so freely and effortlessly through each and every one of us? At what age do you think it started to dry up? Early, yeah, young. Pablo Picasso said, every child is an artist. The challenge is ultimately how to remain an artist once we grow up. How do we retain that childlike passion, that childlike ability to differentiate, to creatively solve problems, but then ultimately plug it back into our adult life. Leadership is fear, is going to cripple performance. An idea, because if we were to follow the trail of breadcrumbs from any unmet goal, any unmet expectation, it would almost always lead back to, in some way, shape, or form, that of fear. Fear of the unknown. I saw this acronym years ago. What does fear oftentimes represent? Simply nothing more than false evidence appearing real. Cripple performance. Because truly, what is a disruptive strategy worth in the world of business? What is a creative idea worth? What is it worth to expand your own definition of risk? Quick heads up, I'm going to use a Southwest Airlines business example because of this. And I was coming down on a flight into Vegas on Southwest. Well, sure enough, at the last second, as we were coming down, the wings of the plane dipped. And then we kerned. And we came down, bam, bounced off the tarmac, came around and fishtailed right before coming back down again. And people around me went white, hands digging into the armrest beside them. And immediately the captain, the leader for Southwest, comes on over the intercom, says, ladies and gentlemen, here at Southwest Airlines, you'll be delighted to know that there'll be no additional charge for that second landing. And I watched around me, a couple of folks, hands loosened up. A couple of folks even chuckled, as you'd hear, but I wondered at that point, I even still wonder at this point now, how many complaint letters did Southwest dodge as a result of that simple comment? That comment that's not in their policies and procedures manual. But that's because creativity, adaptability, flexibility, it's not a policy nor a procedure, but rather it's a culture. It's a culture. Is we've got this left logic, analytical problem-solving space of our mind, as well as this emotional, creative, risk-taking problem-solving space. Yet particularly in the Western Hemisphere here as adults and professionals, we actually exist in this analytical, logical problem-solving space of our mind. The vast school, we were taught to take all of our wonderful, different, cool, multi-dimensional type ideas and solutions and then trained to narrow them down to come up with just one analytical response. As a kid, I knew as a little boy that I enjoyed painting and drawing and playing, but unfortunately I was told flat out by one of my early school teachers that I actually was not a very good artist, and unfortunately I listened to her and I quit. And I set down my paintbrushes and I didn't pick them up again, not once, for another 20 years. And as I went through, it was at that point this very academic blueprint for success, this very standardized model for what they called excellence in education. I became fairly operationally efficient on figuring out how to just simply memorize those very homogeneous formulas and then retain the information just long enough so that I could time it and regurgitate it back to my teachers and then campus. But it was at that point of physically putting paint on canvas that all of a sudden the right side of my mind, that side that had been intentionally repressed, intentionally held dormant for so long, all of a sudden began to creep open a little bit. Again, I began to see a lot of these challenges that were taking place in my life a little bit different. In fact, I began to see a lot of those core formulas and strategies and best practices that I'd worked so hard to memorize in business school. I began to see them from a little different perspective. And that's really where this presentation was born from. Now, certainly, how are you going to reawaken that childlike imagination? How are you going to reignite your own artistry as a leader? To him, he said, creativity is really nothing more than seeing logically what the rest of the world around us physically sees, logically sees with our eyes, but yet thinking like no one's ever thought before. And I think that's exactly what creativity is going to mean for the future of the workforce, is to see what those around you see, but to have the courage, like Albert Einstein did, to twist that landscape and ultimately unthink like no one has ever thought before. I think that is the art of leadership. Thank you guys very much for the opportunity to share.